Testing 1 2. 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 Alrighty. Great games. Alrighty. Great games. Alrighty. Forgot to shut off my mute. Great games at your table. This is Jonathan Albin, and this is Game Master's Soapbox. And tonight we're going to be going over the role-play basics for Game Masters. I know that it probably is a redundant thing to go over in terms of those of you that are fans of Twitch and of watching RPG games online. But I wanted to talk a little bit about it from the standpoint of if there's a person who is considering being a game master and a storyteller and they don't know what it really takes to be a game master, I kind of want to go over what the mechanics of it are, not really a specific minute by minute, blow by blow kind of conversation, but talk about generally what needs to occur during a game session from a game master's viewpoint. So if you will, you'll be able to follow along on my little list. I've reduced the size of it to make it a little bit more friendly, I guess. My biggest challenge is that I'm foundering with viewership, and I'm not really sure what that all is about because I feel like I've got decent content, but I'm not getting the feedback I would like. So there you have it. So when you are a game master, when you are going to be the storyteller, you have several obligations, and we're going to go over them and what it is you're trying to do and what your real job, if you will, at the table is. There are a lot of people who look at role-playing games and don't even understand the mechanic of it, so we're going to talk about that a little bit as well. But let's get started, all right? So we're going to talk about taking on the role of a game master. And in taking on the role of a game master, you are setting yourself up for several obligations. You're there to make sure the players have a good time. You're there to relate the encounters and the conditions in a way that is understandable and easily acceptable by the players. And you're there to be judge and jury, so to speak, for things that occur in the game when players make decisions and how those decisions play out. This process, therefore, means that the game master has to be attuned to not only what the game is about and what is going on mechanically, but he also has to have a feel for the way the players are responding, how they are interpreting what's going on, and whether or not they are enjoying themselves. So this process takes several steps, and not the least of which is developing the initial contact between the players. Now, if you're talking a very first time, cold start, sit down at the table, what do I do? Panic mode. Realize the first thing you have to do is kind of get an understanding of who the players are at the table and what their personas they're going to be playing, what their characters are going to be like, and then figure out how they're going to coordinate. Now, in NycosRPG, for example, the game is set up to be collaborative from the get-go, so the players should be coordinating their developing personas before the game starts, because that way they're already in a team mode. They're already set up with this collaborative feel. But certain campaigns and certain game masters prefer to have a cold start where the players literally have to meet each other. And so player introduction is important. Where they are within the scene is important. And the game master's job is to identify and clarify where those are in relation to one another. Now, in a case of a miniatures-based RPG, if you're going to be using tabletop figures or drawings or maps or whatever, that makes it arguably a little bit easier to resolve, because you can simply place a piece on a board and say, relative to each other, you can see your distances. But if you're playing theater of the mind, it's much more important to clarify whether somebody is close to, distant from, arm's length, across the room, whatever the parameters are, so that the player can acclimate themselves to the scene in a three-dimensional imaginary space. When we do this, when we define where people are in relationship to one another, then it makes things like sequencing of events a little easier to handle. And it's easier also to deal with where they are in reference to things that might occur, positioning compared to assets, things that are in the area that they could engage with or whatever. But this also, this introduction and location is not just location physically, but it's also location in terms of headspace. Where are the players? And this is really talking about the group dynamics. If it's a brand new group, cold start, everybody's brand new to the game, the only thing you know for certain is that they are excited to be there because it's a first session. They're wanting to experience it. So having that on your side makes it easier for you to start the lineup of what's going to happen in each scene. But having an idea of what the group dynamics are like at the beginning make for a much smoother game session. Now, when I speak of group dynamics, in particular, I'm talking about how the players relate to one another as persona, as characters. How do the characters interact? If a player, for example, is distant or hard to get to know or whatever, their persona may not be. Their persona could be, they could be playing somebody who's rather gregarious, and so you may find challenges between what a player hopes to do and what they're capable of doing, and so you have to take that all into account as well. But you want to make it as easygoing as possible, so you want to kind of smooth out any group dynamics challenges before you even start. And therefore, you need to also be able to give to the players a clear understanding of the objective. If it is a session 0 and their objective is to get to know one another, then you treat it like a regular party at somebody's house. You're going to create icebreakers. You're going to create scenes that bring them together. You're going to bring together conversations that engage them or whatever. But you have to have this clear understanding available to the players. If it's not a session 0, if you've already got a campaign going on, this means also perhaps reminding them where they are in the scene, how far in they are on the campaign, what it is their objectives are, and where they're headed. That way they can recall. Most of us play our characters, run the games, and then box it up and put it away for the week, and we play it again the next time. So there's not necessarily a lot of continuous thought about what is going on in the scene. So it's important to be able to reestablish those objectives as smoothly and as quickly as possible for the players to be able to interact with it. Now, the next thing is to make sure you can reduce or avoid player confusion. And generally, this means listening for their questions. When you describe something, watch their faces to make sure they're following along and that they're recognizing where they are compared to each other, what the situation is, and all of that, and therefore reduce the amount of confusion they have. And you can avoid much of the confusion simply by remembering to ask any questions. Is there something that's confusing to anybody? Are we all on the same page? Because when you do this, then it's easier to establish and therefore maintain the game states that turn after turn within the conflict or within the encounter, because they have a clear understanding of where they are at the beginning, and so therefore it's just a matter of adjusting that as you go along. But recall that each turn, each round, before you start the next round, you want to make sure that you restate the game state, the condition everyone's in, the condition the bad guys are in, and such, so that the players have the right information to make a decision. And you want to offer balanced play experiences and opportunities. If you have a group of several players and you've got one really strong alpha personality and you've got several wallflowers, you've got to make sure that you find ways to engage the wallflowers in the scene so they at least feel their part in it. The biggest challenge with role-play games, and I think this is something that I've just been really kind of focusing on in the last few weeks for myself, is that it is a collaborative play experience. It is not ever a situation where a player is YOLO, because it's not you only live once, it's we only live once. And so if you're a player in a group, or your players in your groups are being a little erratic, they're actually endangering the other players in the group. And therefore, they have to be brought to understand that it is a collaborative play, and therefore to make sure that you communicate clearly, and that you in turn ask questions when things seem a little off or a little challenging. My most famous question in a game is when they're asking me if they can do a certain action or whatever, is just simply to put back to them, are you sure that's what you want to do? Are you sure you want to do that? And that question alone, number one, it sort of leads them. It sort of lets them know that where they're going is maybe uncharted ground, or they may not be fully aware of the consequences. But just simply by ensuring that what they are saying they want to do is indeed what they want to do, you're able to smooth out those rough spots in your narrative and in gameplay, and make sure that the game session, turn after turn, feels fun and engaging. And it really comes down to that. In all cases, you have to have fun with the game. If a situation goes bad and the die rolls are going bad, you need to roll with it. You need to figure out, what you're going to do in the story should things continue down this current course. Or maybe you make light of it and talk about the tragedy of die rolling or whatever. The reality is that you are trying to engage the players so that they can have fun while you're having fun as well. The essence of all this is that when you're playing a role-play game, especially if you're a brand new game master, just remember that everyone who plays role-play games started the same way, and that all your players are really on your side. Yes, they're playing characters in a story where they're going to be defeating your monsters and perhaps burning down your buildings or whatever in the story. It is still just a bunch of players that really want to have a good time and are on your side as a storyteller. So role-playing basics are just that simple. You want to be clear, be concise, be complete in your information. Make sure the players are having fun. Make sure the players are engaged. Treat them all with equity so that there's a balance of what the action is and who's getting the limelight or whatever. And you'll have a great session. Now that completes the organized format of this show, but of course from here on out, I'm here for communication and conversation. So if you have any comments you'd like to add, feel free to put those in the chat and let me know what you think about this. If there's any information you'd like to have that I'm not providing, put it in the chat, put it in the comments, and I'll respond to that as quickly as I can. I am Jonathan Albin. This is NycosRPG, and this portion has been the Game Master Soapbox, role-playing basics for beginners. See you next time for that. Alrighty, so we are on the air, and we are live, and we are one. And that might actually be just me watching my own video, because this time I had to turn it on to make sure that my visuals were working right. The other day I had a problem with the blocking. It was moving the camera around a lot, and so I wanted to see if I could try to fix that problem. So if you are on there with me and you would like to ask any questions, feel free to do so. I do have the Discord, and you can join the Discord by the link down below. If you do, I am currently hanging out in the, let's see, I better say I'm on a live game chat. There we go. That I'm in the live chat room, and so if you want to hop on, feel free to do that. If not, if you're just viewing free via Twitch, I will respond to you quickly and efficiently as soon as you post. So feel free to leave any message you want, and I will respond to that. Ostensibly, I'll be on here at least till the half hour. So I guess since I've set this up and talked about roleplay basics for game masters, I probably should talk about some of the things that have been going on in my games group that have caused me to want to go over these basics. And the first thing is my Monday and Tuesday groups are being held at a game store in Redlands, California. If you are in the Southern California and would like to participate, simply head over to Board Game Paradise in Redlands, California. It's in their downtown district, right on State Street. And we're going to commercials here in 55 seconds. So I guess this is, let's see, I can do this. Alrighty. So I just set them off for a little bit because it's not really fun to sit and have to watch a commercial right as the show gets going, right? That's no fun. So anyway, the issues that the Monday and Tuesday groups are new players almost always. We've had every week we've had 1 to 2 new players join every session. So Mondays and Tuesdays from 6 p.m. until closing, and so on Mondays that's 10 p.m. and on Tuesdays that's 9 p.m. We're running NycosRPG RPGs in the back room of that store, and so just drop by and ask about it. You'll be invited to join us. Uh, there is a table fee, but your first session is always free. So make sure you let them know you're a first timer, and they'll uh, just direct you back to where we are. At any rate, those games always being new has been kind of a challenge for the more veteran players because they are kind of dissatisfied when they have to spend a lot of time waiting for new players to catch up. And so I've been working on ways to encapsulate the new play in a faster method. And that means we've been using a form that I've been calling Gumby roleplay. And that's fundamentally you put down the basics of a character that you would like to play, name, species, take your skill, your actual marks of your species as your primary, your initial skills, and then just start playing. And as you go, anything you need to add to it, you just like the character Gumby can adjust and adapt itself to the situation. In this case, the player can pick up new skills arbitrarily on the way just simply because he probably knew it and just didn't have it written down yet. So therefore it allows us to play within minutes instead of having a 20 to 30 minute to an hour lead in for every new character. So sorry for that. I get some interruptions occasionally. Anyway, therefore, the game master has to be adaptable to the situation, and the scene needs to be open enough to allow new players to be added in. So therefore, the play mechanics of NycosRPG, at least in the early moments of the sessions, are often more fluid than they would be otherwise. In other words, I have a basic idea of where the starting point is, but it depends on which players show and what they want to cover, what they want to talk about initially sets up where we begin the scene. And so it kind of has a running start kind of a feel to it, as some of the players are already engaged and new ones are picking up the basics. Now, in terms of your sessions, if you're online with me and can answer a couple of questions, I greatly appreciate it. And if you can't, that's okay too. But the first one is, when you play role-play games, when you're starting out, do you usually have a session 0, or are you more the kind that says just drop me in the scene and I'll be able to just take off? Are you adaptable enough that you're able to roll with the punches, or do you need some kind of a lead-in to set up who you are within a campaign? I've noticed that many of the players who come in with an established backstory tend to also want to have some resources at their fingertips from their backstory, because they feel that those resources or those assets will be helpful to their game positioning, and they'll have advantages they wouldn't have otherwise. And it's okay. I mean, it's a just a matter of knowledge, and I'm just curious what it's like at the tables where you play. The Twitch motif is fundamentally vicarious. I understand that you're coming on to watch the dancing monkeys perform on the screen, watch the shiny objects move around. But the reason why I ask questions and the reason why I hope to engage is that I envision Twitch being a play mechanism as well, that at some point players would just be able to hop on and start playing because they already have a persona put together and they just want to hear what's going on with their character within the story. So having a ongoing campaign with players that are familiar is important, and it's hard to do when you're starting out. And with all the time that I've been a game master, I've been a game master for over 50 years, as you may already know, very nearly 50 years. But in all of that time, every game session I've ever had to start fundamentally was basically started with an invitation to play. And so once again, I'm inviting you on Saturday mornings to join us in a live game. Just hop on to twitch.tv/NycosRPG, this very channel. And we start playing around 9 o'clock if we can get players together. And we're playing within the 9th iteration, so we're in the same timeline as my current tabletop campaigns, as well as my live stream campaigns. And if you are more intrigued than that, you can also join our Patreon at patreon.com/Nykos. And with the Patreon membership, you then have access to a Sunday Patreon member-only game played on the afternoons online. So that's a couple of ways that you can actually play. If you're interested in being involved with the live stream game, we are working on trying to put one of those together online as well. I have game mastered for such in the past, and I could do it easy enough, right, just by dropping a pen and starting. But the reality is I want to have players who are excited and interested in the story, want to be involved, and can commit to being on air with me every week. So if you are interested, let me know. So I've got a couple of viewers online. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to pitch in on the chat and let me know what you'd like to talk about. I'm open to anything, including a bit of a ask me anything if you so desire. I'm willing to talk about any subject. The ones that I like to talk about, of course, are role-playing games. But, oh, we're on break for commercial. Oops, sorry, I forgot about the commercial. I didn't mean to cut off in the middle like that. I'll have to do better at watching for those. So, what would you like to talk about? Gosh, I like to talk about role-play games, but I also like to talk about other things. So, don't mean to stonewall, but I'm not sure what you would particularly would like to talk about, or what subject we should bring up. Okay, well, we can talk about games experience. When I was younger and was running games when I was, I guess, at any point in time, the biggest challenge is being understood by the players in terms of description. When you've given them a description and they get familiar with the location, then it becomes easier because you just say you're in the town or you're at the bar or whatever, and they're familiar with what that layout is because you've described it in a previous setting. And so therefore, session after session, your players get to know a little bit more about the world. But when you're first starting, you have to be pretty descriptive in order for them to feel engaged. One of the, I guess, players are really the most challenging part of role play games because the players come to the table with a lot of different agendas. And I will do another episode one of these days, in particular, talking about game players and their objectives. But I wanted to, well, it's another one of the situations where I think I'm the only one watching. And if you're out there and you got something else you'd like to say, feel free to. But otherwise, I think I'm just going to end this because I feel like I'm talking to myself, and I kind of, I don't know. I don't feel like I'm making any headway. So I will join you guys again next time. This is Jonathan Alvin, NycosRPG. See you later.